Okay, so story time. I want to share an experience with you about a very spirited connection that I made with somebody in real life. So it really ended up in a disaster, right? So first, I met this individual. It was a man, and when I met him, when we met, I wasn't really well put together, right? But he seemed to be interested in what I had going on at the time. I was vending. Okay, so he had told me about a job. His job was hiring, so he kind of got me in there. Now the thing is that you had to go through a couple of weeks of training. You know, so I don't know what it was about this dude, but the moment that we met, I knew he was going to be very important. I just didn't know in what way. I began to experience things very intensely after our meeting with each other. He was an older gentleman. So, you know, um, when I met up with him again, I didn't realize that it was him I was picking up on. And at the time, we lived very close to each other. Okay, so I was like, oh my God, is this him? Like, what type of things is he going through? Like, why is this connection so strong? Because it's been a while since I've had a physical connection to where it's this strong. I'm trying to tell you, I could hear this man's thoughts. And that's what really attracted me to him, because I could hear his thoughts. He had some beautiful thoughts about me. Of course, these are things that he wouldn't say out loud. I could feel the magic within him as well. Where he went wrong was, instead of him getting to know me, he went online and he found my social media. Now, the thing is that I'm not far from my social media or who I am in person, but in this particular situation, we're supposed to be working together. So I don't want you looking on my IG. I don't have anything to hide. It's not private. The one that he saw, it's not private, right? But if you didn't know me, you wouldn't have found my IG. So you intentionally sought out my social media. Why is that? Because for some reason, sometimes people think that they can get to know you through social media. And my thing is, yes, of course, I have a dominant personality. I am the same on the internet as I am in person, but I will admit, in person, I'm more quieter, because this is where I get my time of observation. This is how I learn. I shut my mouth, I listen, I pay attention. So I guess we could kind of say that I be in the flow of things. So then when I had to meet up with him another time, I met up with him a couple of times before we saw each other again in person. We had like phone chats and meetings and Zooms and all that. So, I was picking things up every time, and I couldn't understand what was going on. So, I believe that he liked me, but he couldn't understand why he liked me. And I guess the shit was upsetting him for whatever reason. I don't know. It would trigger him to think about it. And I'm just like, if he's triggered, then that means he's thinking something negative. He's thinking about, what if I don't feel the same? What if I reject him? So I knew what he was going through. But one thing that I know about a man, you gotta let, you gotta let him, even if he's not in control, you gotta at least make him think he's in control. So you can't chase, you can't open up, you can't say the things that you know that he's not saying. You just gotta wait and be patient and see what happens. So I meet him in person. The job, I did not get a good vibe from this job. So I knew that God did not want me there. But I was meant to have this experience, because the journey there and back, I met some people. I ran into some people and had some conversations and was enlightened and informed about a lot of things. Pieces of the puzzle sometimes just fall in my lap out of nowhere when I just allow myself to be in the flow, explore and adventure off a little bit. I'm always protected. So the easiest thing is for me to be at home. I don't constantly want to put my spirit guides and my ancestors to work all the time with being irresponsible. with my spiritual quote unquote burden. I do feel like sometimes I am a burden to them, but I mean, not really. I don't have a desire to really party the night away or some shit like that, But when it comes to a social gathering, I will enjoy myself socially. But anyway, so I was extremely triggered after seeing this man in person. Oh my God, I was distracted by his thoughts. I could just hear him. I could feel him moving in the room, even when I was paying attention, talking to somebody else. I'm trying to tell you, and I swear, it felt like somebody took a bow and arrow and shot me in the heart. I said, I know this man ain't just... I know he did not. And after I felt that, I heard him say, she has a beautiful smile. And when I looked up, it was him looking at me. And I just had to play it off, but it was like I was love struck, So anyway, him looking at my socials, he wanted to kind of get to know a little bit more of my personality, and he wanted to see how he could match me, how he could relate to me. So I believe he spent time with kind of like practicing and observing me. And I think that he found a resonance within me as well. When people lose faith, or when they lose hope, or when they feel lifeless, when they encounter me, sometimes it brings them back to life. That is inspiration. I'm pretty sure somewhere in there I inspired him, because I could pick up that he was down on himself, and he may have had people in his life, that put pressure on him to do and be more. I kind of picked up too, he was running away from his past, but I also picked up that he really wanted to be around and with his son. So I'm just like, he's made a lot of sacrifices. People don't understand what's most important to him. That was our trauma bond. At the time, I didn't know that. Yeah, that was a very deep trauma bond, and it was very challenging to free myself and outgrow that trauma bond, because that really hit home. And for me to know that somebody else was going through it too, it attached to the heart and the mind, as well as spiritually. It became a soul tie. Soul ties are pretty strong, I made music about this man. I wrote stories about this man. I was so in awe with it, but it was over before it began. So the thing is that he told people, and he showed people my IG, people that he worked with, authorities and officials. So, because he was in an authoritative position, of course, right? So they won't feel in it. He didn't understand, but at the same time, these are his people. And obviously, these are some of the people that I'm picking up in his energy that are oppressing to him as well. So, I mean, I could feel them. I could hear them talking about me, gossiping about me. And I could feel a deal being made. At the time that I felt it, I didn't know what it was. But about an hour later, that man started crying. I was like, what did he do? What did he do? So I remember calling him. And he says something to me that lets me know everything. He tells me, because I was having a hard time with figuring out how I was going to get there. So he tells me, I got your back. People are against you, but remember, I'm right beside you. And I'm just like, what is he talking about? He don't know my trials and tribulations. He doesn't know my opposition. Boom, right then and there, I know he's been watching those socials. Boom, now he's telling me that I'm going to have some issues at that job with those people. Meaning that obviously they didn't like what they saw from me, and they want to teach me a lesson, or they want to try to humble me in some kind of way. When God told me, God says, if you go through with this, of course you will pass with flying colors. But rather you go through it or rather you don't, these people already made a decision. So they tried to orchestrate some type of circus act to psychologically damage me or abuse me. They had plans on dragging me throughout that whole process. And there were different levels to that process. I said, oh, they trying to Hunger Game my ass. Is that what they trying to do? So I politely declined. Now the thing is is that this man, he got a sign-on bonus for people that he refer. So of course he want to try to get me to go all the way, even though he knows that we have people that are trying to go up against me, because it's a bet. Okay, so they don't know I know anything about this stupid bet. So the thing is that they gave him the $1,000, and all he had to do was let them try to humiliate me and drag me without being involved and without telling me. I said that's why he was crying, because he felt guilty for making that deal. I said, wow. I said, that's crazy. You know, he had all these crazy conflicting ass feelings. Then the moment that he realized that he was attracted to me and he saw me in a beautiful light, you know, that's when the devil came in and got his ass. Yes, that light was bright. I could hear that man. I heard that man talking. I heard his thoughts. It was so loud. It was so strong. Yes, you know, there are some people to where my connections are like that. Most of the time, you know, the more space that I have with individuals, the more I can pick up on them spiritually. But with a connection like this, you know, this is what you call tapped in. So when I politely declined the position for the job, he wanted to ask me why, and I didn't want to explain it, because I'm just like, you're not about to sit here and gaslight me. And you're not about to sit here and convince me. Because yes, you know, every time I encounter him, the feeling, being able to hear how beautiful he thought I was, of course I was developing feelings for him, you know, in secret. He knew that, you know, but at the same time, he was in denial. He wanted to be in denial because he had already sold me over. So I was like, wow, this is a mess. I would be a fool to enter into this. You know, God said, rather you do, rather you don't, I'm going to get them. So, of course, I canceled it. And the thing is that they didn't want to believe they took the $1,000 away from him, because they said he told me, and that's why I didn't want to do it. But he ain't tell me nothing. I ain't talked to that man after I told him I wasn't interested in the job anymore. He wanted an explanation, but I ain't never responded. I never spoke to him again. They took that money back, and then they betrayed him. So he got to see the truth of who those people were to him too. I tell you, God worked in mysterious ways. I was looking forward to working that job, but I couldn't believe it. I was like, am I about to work this job and find love? Is that what is about to happen? Or find some romance? I was like, is God giving it all to me like this right now? But it was like, no. That man held on to me for a while. You know, he was kind of a player, because I could feel he was dealing with all type of women. You know, women that he used to date, they stopped dating, but they still kind of keep in contact, hang out. He was messing around with somebody at work. I believe he had a woman. I don't know. He didn't have a ring. But I could feel him sneaking away from somebody to talk to somebody else on the phone. You know, these were not like morning hours. They were night hours. I was like, what is he doing? I don't know, but I was told to share that experience. That experience also somewhat manifested for me spiritually as well. You know, they say what goes up must come down, but you know, they say it has to be created in the heavens first. But I mean, I've seen shit happen in the physical, and then it happened in the spiritual, and it doesn't manifest back into the physical. You know, I don't know what to say or really what to think about that. But I feel as if, you know, I had to tell that story. I don't know. I mean, I've experienced different levels of these connections. So, I mean, I know what it is. I know how to pay attention. You know, I don't know. I feel like somebody's trying to ask me something. Whatever. I'm just going to end it here. So until next time, we'll talk again. Thank you.